You're watching Newsroom on the SABC News. A warm welcome from a very wet Johannesburg in South Africa. It's actually flooding all over the Gauteng province. Good morning to you. I'm Eben. This show is broadcast live every weekday morning between 9 and 10 a.m. Highlights are then repeated at 2 o'clock in the afternoon with rebroadcast at 5 a.m. the following morning if you've missed it. We also stream live on YouTube between 9 and 10 a.m. Every weekday morning with the entire show available on our YouTube channel all of the time. So, we're back at the North Gauteng High Court at 9:30 this morning as the murder trial of Oscar Pistorius continues. More witnesses continued their testimony of a woman's chilling screams before gunshots rang out, contradicting the Paralympians' version of events. We look at gender violence in South Africa and then talk credit with bad records set to be expunged. At least that's the theory. First, let's take a look at the news headlines. The third state witness is expected back on the witness stand when the Oscar Pistorius murder trial resumes in Pretoria this morning. Jansen testified yesterday that he and his wife, Michelle Burger, were woken by piercing cries followed by gunshots on the morning Riva Steenkamp was shot dead. Johnson's testimony follows that of Estelle van der Merwe, who testified that she heard what seemed to be fighting on the 14th of February last year. The three major platinum producers have rejected a revised wage demand from the AMCU union in the sixth week of a crippling strike. AMCU proposed introducing their 12,500 rand minimum wage demand over 3 years. And with Graham Smith's imminent departure, the series in the balance, the third and final cricket test between South Africa and Australia, is poised for a dramatic finish today. The visitors amassed a mammoth lead of 510 runs before declaring on 303 for 5 shortly before tea on day 4, and the Aussies reduced the Proteas to 71 for the loss of 4 wickets at stumps, still 439 runs behind. More witnesses contradicted Oscar Pistorius' version of events on that fateful night in February last year. Witnesses gave evidence yesterday that they felt obliged to come forward morally after hearing Pistorius' story during his bail application. Day 3 of the trial of the century gets underway in the North Gauteng High Court at 9:30 this morning, with Jansen expected to continue his testimony. For an update, we cross to our reporter Criselda Lewis outside the North Gauteng High Court to give us the latest. Good morning, Criselda. Are you with us? Good morning, Criselda. You can hear me? Okay. We'll try and get back to Criselda shortly. It seems as if the bad weather here in Gauteng is playing havoc with all our operations this morning. Of course, let's just recap first what happened, and then hopefully we can get back to Criselda. IT designer Jansen is expected on the witness stand when the Oscar Pistorius murder trial resumes in Pretoria this morning. Jansen testified yesterday that he and his wife, Michelle Burger, were woken by piercing cries followed by gunshots on the morning Riva Steenkamp was shot dead.
Another dramatic entrance, Oscar Pistorius arriving to a media army. Then a second day of grilling for state witness Michelle Burger, who lives in the neighboring estate. Burger's credibility and reliability came under scrutiny.
177 meters away in your house, yes, coming from another house.
Ma'am, our windows were open, we had no aircon and no roof fan, and there was no vertical building between our house at that stage and the other house. So, and we're in a very, very quiet area. We're almost next to the Farm Inn, which is a nature reserve, small nature reserve, so it's very quiet. Sound travels.
Then the state's second witness, Estelle van der Merwe, took the stand. This is the first witness living in the same estate as Pistorius. Van der Merwe's Silverwoods house is about 50 to 100 meters from Pistorius' property.
Om ongeveer 3 uur se kant het ek 4 klokgeluide gehoor.
And around about 3 o'clock in the morning, I heard 4 gunshots. 4 gunshots, it was my lady.
Then it was the first state witness's husband, Charles Peter Jansen.
I got woken up by the screams of a lady, a woman, and I remember after I woke up, I lifted my head from the pillow to ensure that I heard correctly. And when I heard the lady scream again, I jumped out of bed and I ran to the balcony, which is on the first floor.
Johnson's testimony corroborates his wife's, who also said she heard cries for help from a man and a woman. Griselda Lewis, SABC News in Pretoria.
Well, Griselda Lewis is still not up and running, and I can tell you the weather is really bad here in Gauteng. We're suffering floods all over the province, and it continues to rain as we speak. We're battling to get our links up, but as soon as it goes up to the Pretoria High Court, we'll cross to Griselda Lewis for a little update. She is standing outside the court where proceedings will get underway at about 9:30 this morning. Of course, South Africa's justice system is also on trial this month, with all the stops having been pulled out for this case. Many have questioned why this doesn't happen with all other cases of murder and violence against women in this country. The trial takes place against a backdrop in South Africa where violence against women is all too familiar on our front page as well. We are joined by Lisa Vetten, a research associate at the Wits Institute for Social and Economic Research. Good morning to you. Thank you for joining us.
Morning, Eben. Thank you.
We live in a country where violence against women is clear every day. This Pistorius case has become such a sensational attraction. Shouldn't we be dealing with this kind of issue in a sort of broader way of violence against women?
We should, because I think this is a case that is an example of the most common way in which women are murdered or die violently in this country. And so we should be looking at the broader social context of why do we have the problem of domestic violence that we do? And why are the figures not going down? Why, with all that we've done over the last 20 years, is the best that we can produce stagnation? So I think we should be taking the opportunity to ask those broader questions, not just who heard how much, how far were they from the Pistorius house at the time.
Well, what do the numbers say, the research say in South Africa about the way women are killed, often at the hands of their partners, was this the case in the Oscar Pistorius?
Well, we've seen some significant changes between 1999 and 2009 when 2 national studies were done. In 1999, there were 4 women being killed every day by their intimate male partners. In 2009, that number had gone down to 3. But if you look at that from a statistically significant point of view, there's no real difference or improvement. So it's pretty much well stayed the same. So while that has stayed the same, however, the number of women being killed by strangers or men they don't know has gone down quite significantly. What that has now meant is that almost close to 60% of women in South Africa are killed by their intimate male partners. So I think that's the most disturbing change that we've seen in the last decade or so.
A case like this one, very high profile, overshadows pretty much everything else. But the flip side of this coin is that it happens pretty much every day in South Africa, and a lot of it sort of flies under the radar.
Yes, absolutely, and I think that is a challenge we should put to the media, is why does it take a case like this to suddenly remind people that domestic violence is a problem in South Africa? Because I think while we sometimes care a little bit about rape, enough to go out and have the occasional march now and again, people are absolutely indifferent to domestic violence. It doesn't even raise an eyebrow anymore. And I think that is what allows it to continue to fly under the radar, because we make it normal and we make it invisible. So, and in this case, I think what is quite unusual is that somebody actually went to investigate when they heard screaming.
Yeah.
Most people simply turn the other way or wish that the noise would go down.
Well, the one witness said yesterday that, well, we didn't really want to get involved. And I suppose, but when we saw it in the papers and we saw the bail application, that's when we felt morally obliged to do it. And is that very much the case of most people in South Africa?
That is so much the case. We don't want to get involved. It's a private matter. It's between the two of them. And unfortunately, that attitude then also spills over into the police, who will also, they'll arrive, but they'll say, don't the two of you want to sort it out? Do you really want to put him in prison? Don't the two of you want to perhaps just mediate this? And I think that's how we make it normal. I think we've also got to understand this problem within the context of the fact that so many of the organisations which do provide services to the majority of women who can't afford private psychologists and security companies are operating under very constrained and severe funding cuts. So many of them have half the staff that they had 4 years ago because we did an analysis of what had happened as a result of funding cuts, but they're still trying to do the same amount of work. And obviously your services do deteriorate, the quality does decline, you can't see as many women. So it's all very nice that we tell women to speak out, break the silence, go for help, but if it's not there, it's a waste of their time.
I want to talk about cause and effect, and I want to talk about the factors that are driving this behaviour in South Africa. Is it mostly cultural across all the race groups in this country?
Yes, I think it's domestic violence and rape are some of our truly cross-cultural phenomena in South Africa. They're not confined to any particular cultural group, nor I think are they unique to any particular class. We often hear this explanation that it's poverty which causes violence.
I just have to interject quickly, Lisa. There we have live pictures coming in from the courts in Pretoria. That's Oscar Pistorius arriving in court this morning, and it's much better organised, it seems, than it's been the last couple of days. The media are really being kept at bay, and quite a strong police contingent walking him into the North Gauteng High Court. Those are live pictures coming to you from the North Gauteng High Court. Is Oscar Pistorius arrives for day 3 of this trial. Now, Lisa, please don't go away. Just stay with us. We're going to continue this discussion because I feel it's really at the heart of what is going on here, and it is the most important outcome that I think everybody would like to see from this trial. But Griselda Lewis is now back with us at the North Gauteng High Court. Good morning, Griselda. Are you with us?
Right here, Eben, can you hear me?
Well, thank you for finally showing up here this morning, Griselda. But we saw Oscar Pistorius come in there with a very heavy police presence. It seems as if the authorities have stepped it up.
Oh, they most certainly have, Eben. Well, as you can see, the live pictures that you were showing were of Oscar Pistorius just arriving here at the North Gauteng High Court once again to come and listen to the testimony. We're expecting Jansen to come under cross-examination here today, and basically we're expecting the defence to dig in to his testimony, trying to establish what really took place on that fateful Valentine's Day. But a lot more order, I must say, in comparison, Eben, to what we saw yesterday. The police really seem to have this situation here under control today. There are several cones that have been placed here on the side of the road, and actually after Mr. Pistorius went inside the court, the media started clapping because it was very much orderly today. None of the pushing that you saw yesterday. You recall, of course, for the viewers during our live crossing yesterday, the chaos that was here, the media scrum. So it seems to be getting better on a daily basis.
There were no complaints or injuries yesterday following that scrum that happened out there because it looked rather vicious.
No, vicious, I will agree with you, Eben, but definitely no injuries. The police really have the situation under control, but yesterday, the pictures that we saw were really quite disturbing, so I guess that's why the police have been stepped up here. And from this morning, you could see they were walking around basically. When we asked them as well, Oscar Pistorius, would he arrive from the same direction? They simply said yes, and could you media please just stand here, wait for him to come. He is going to come, and then could you please take your pictures in an orderly fashion? Nobody pushed, and I guess the media complied today.
Now, I wanted to just quickly recap about what happened yesterday, sort of a blow-by-blow account of what's been going on with the witnesses. Estelle van der Merwe was the first witness to sort of take over yesterday. Her stretch on the stand was not that long. What can we read into that, Griselda? And tell us about the evidence that she gave and her performance, as it were, on the dock.
Well, first of all, Eben, very important to note that Estelle van der Merwe is the first witness to take the stand who lives in the same estate as Oscar Pistorius. Well, the distance between the two, after our calculations, is that she lives diagonally across Oscar Pistorius' house. It's about 50 to 100 meters, and while she described hearing screams and basically also hearing some gunshots. So very critically, you'd also notice that the state is really trying to bring witnesses because there isn't anyone who can give an account of what really happened inside Oscar Pistorius' house. And while Riva Steenkamp is no more, the only thing that we're relying on is Oscar Pistorius' version of events. So what the state will then try to do is to rope in very early people who live within close proximity to Oscar Pistorius for them to give an account of what they heard. Did they hear screams? Did they hear gunshots? So that's a lot of the testimony that we're getting at the moment. And I must say, also very strategic on the part of the state to rope those in to kind of give an idea or some indication of what possibly could have happened on that fateful Valentine's Day. So Estelle van der Merwe, a lot speaking about the fight that she heard as well. We also heard that in the testimony of the first state witness, Michelle Berger, who also described shouts that took place and also some screams that took place, some cries for help. So a lot of the testimony that we're hearing here at the moment, people are speaking about screams, and importantly, that the state would want to bring that in as well, or to get that testimony across as early as possible to contradict the events of Oscar Pistorius, who says it was a day that was as normal as possible until he had heard that there was an intruder in his house, some noises. So very critically for that to take place at the moment. I just want to take a look, Eben, towards this direction to see. I see a bit of a convoy coming towards this direction. I'm not sure who that is at the moment. We see a lot of people being steered towards that direction. If it is anybody related to this case, we don't know at the moment. If we could just take a look there. We're not sure at the stage who that... Oh, we see that there are members as well of the ANC Women's League. So it might be a cabinet minister. There you go. Premier Nomvula Mokonyane has just arrived here at the North Gauteng High Court. She's being hugged by the ANC Women's League's Jackie Mofokeng. This is the first time that the Premier of the province is making, a presence here at the North Gauteng High Court. I guess she will speak to the media a little bit later on as well. We'll also find out if she's here in her capacity as the Premier of the province or also as part of the ANC Women's League. So we're expecting then, I guess, to speak to her a bit later on to get a sense of why she's here. Of course, I'm sure she'd want to drive through as well issues relating to the abuse of women and children in this country. Issues that will also take centre stage here. Violence against women as well, which we've heard the ANC Women's League stress since they've been here from the start of the trial and also previously during the bail application.
Thank you very much, Griselda Lewis. Griselda will keep us updated throughout the day, of course, what's happening in the North Gauteng High Court. But violence against women, very much on the agenda with this case. And with me in studio, I've got Professor Lisa Betten, Research Associate at WITS, Institute for Social and Economic Research. And I wanted to ask you, with violence against women being under the microscope here, you mentioned earlier the problems that we have with this. But tell us quickly about the conviction rates for this kind of offence. Where does it stand in this country?
It sits at about 30% of cases, which is quite low if you consider the fact that the people are known to each other. The police don't have to go out and investigate and work out who did this. And I think what was concerning is that in the 10 years that has elapsed between the two studies being done, there was absolutely no improvement. The figures remained exactly the same. But I think what was equally concerning was that the conviction rates for the stranger homicides had actually gone down. So police performance in that regard had worsened.
When we look at this case and we look at femicide, I think that's what it's called, the official term, do you think that in the future, or do you think this case could be a positive and a catalyst for this kind of crime in South Africa, and how would you approach it?
You know, it could be a catalyst. It's still very early, but at this point I haven't seen it becoming a catalyst. People are talking about it's a problem, but they're not getting to, well, if it's a problem, so what do we do about it? And there'd be very many things that desperately need to be done. I spoke about the need to ensure that services can continue to function and provide a good service and can reach as many women as possible. We have to address that. We also have to address the training of the police. We still have far too many complaints of women going to police stations with protection orders and being brushed off, or the police failing to serve them on the abuser, or them not even getting their protection orders granted. So, you know, that's an important part of protection that's not being properly implemented. And if you look at last week's budget speech, didn't get the kind of money to make sure that it was going to be implemented effectively.
Well, that's unfortunately the downside of it. But let's hope that with this case, let's hope the case becomes a catalyst. But thank you for joining us.
Thanks, Eben.
This morning. That's Lisa Vetten, a research associate at the Wits Institute for Social and Economic Research. Now, social media, of course, has been buzzing for more than a week with the Oscar trial, or the trial of the century, depending on where you live. Let's take a look at some of the views that have been coming in. Of course, I've got quite a few different views coming in, of course, on the Oscar. You are not... Okay, who is that? Okay, there we've got... It's not about the Oscar trial, it's about the rain in Johannesburg. Stuart Haldane says, what you need to drive to work in Josie today, very much the case. It's been raining cats and dogs for the last couple of days here in Johannesburg. Ashika says, heavy rain in the Gauteng region, raining tigers, she says. Lovely weather to sleep, and so I will do. You're very lucky to be able to do that, my dear. Some of us have to work, unfortunately. Pigilia says, please be careful on the roads. Gauteng folks, the rain is causing so much havoc, and when it rains, some of people forget how to drive. I cannot agree with you more, Figili. Unfortunately, we don't know that you have to slow down. Walter Nertling is the other person. He says, loving this weather. Gauteng rain, drizzle, loving it. You are one of the few, Walter. You're obviously a person that can stay indoors today. After a short break, is there a lifeline for those of you with very bad credit records? Stay tuned. This is Newsroom on SABC News.
Capitec Bank is asking why to simplify banking. Do you know what your bank costs are?
I don't know, but I know it's too much.
At 65 rand?
Between 200 and 250.
I don't, but I know it's too much. It's too much, yeah.
Why don't you switch banks?
Switch!
Yeah, way too much of a hassle, my man.
We help 100,000 people open accounts at Capitec Bank every month. If you haven't joined us yet, ask why.
Africa is symbolized by these magnificent trees. The Sunland Big Baobab is carbon dated to be around 1,600 years old. When baobabs become 1,000 years old, they begin to hollow inside. In the Big Baobab, this has resulted in the world-famous Baobab Tree Bar.
That's Kaleidoscope, Sundays 5:30 p.m. on SABC News.
Still with Newsroom on SABC News. The National Credit Amendment Bill being debated at the moment aims to expunge credit records of people who struggle with debt. This may, according to some, might undermine a large part of the purpose of the bill, which is to enable those with poor credit records to once again access credit. We are joined by Ina Meyrink, Director at Worksman's Attorneys, to give us her views on this and where we're going with this. Good morning. Thank you for joining us. Just let's start with the broad strokes, your overall view of this debate.
Well, the main purpose of these amendments were to be in favour. They are in favour of the consumer as opposed to the credit industry. And just yesterday we received regulations where the Minister of Trade and Industry said that from the 1st of April this year, all bad adverse credit classifications will be removed within 2 months from the effective date of the regulations. So it's imminent. You don't have to wait for the bill to become effective.
I'd like to clear this up because I'm a bit scared when I hear this because I've heard these kinds of things. But does this mean everyone who's got a bad credit record will start from zero again on the 1st of April? Everybody in the country?
Yes, yes.
So even if I bought 3 TVs and didn't pay it in the last 5 years, my record is going to start from zero?
It's clean.
Wow.
Yeah.
How will this bill affect us, the consumers, then in the medium and long term?
I think one of the main drivers of the government was the complaint by consumers that they can't get jobs because they have a bad credit record. I really think that there were other ways in which to address this, other than expunging all bad credit records in one go.
Yeah.
It puts the credit industry in a bad position because now they have no credit history to refer to. They only have their own history that they can use in order to determine whether the consumer is able to repay the debt or not. Also, the bill intends to publish debt assessment regulations, as well as codes of conduct. Those haven't been published yet.
Yeah.
So the credit industry is at the moment sitting with their own debt assessment procedures. They have no guidance from the minister as to how they should now do the debt assessment, and as I said, there's no codes of conduct at the moment.
Who's going to take the risk? Who sits with the risk? Is it
credit provider sits with the risk? The bill makes it clear that the consumer still has the obligation to repay. And obviously, if the consumer lied while the credit provider asked him certain questions, then that's a complete offence for the credit provider in the case of reckless credit.
What are the positives of this? Are we going to see increased economic activity? Maybe is a spin-off?
No,
or am I stretching it?
No, I really don't think increased economic activity. Not at the moment. I think, well, if I were a credit provider, I would wait for the assessment regulations to be published to see exactly what the minister had in mind and what the focus of the credit provider should be when they do a debt assessment of a consumer.
These debt assessments, or is it affordability assessment?
Affordability yes,
assessment.
That's what a better word.
Is that
yes.
what it's called?
Sorry.
Just tell us a little bit about affordability assessments and also then I suppose the codes of conduct that goes with it.
Yes. Well, we won't know until they've actually been published. In the past, well, up until now, the credit providers developed their own affordability assessments. So there was a questionnaire. And if the consumer gave certain information, they had the right to check this against a credit bureau information. Now they can't. So now they have to rely very heavily on the veracity of the consumer's statements.
What's your medium-term view? Are we heading for a bad credit tsunami over the next 5 years?
I don't think so. I certainly hope not. I think credit providers are conservative and that they will approach this in a conservative and responsible manner.
When will we see this bill being passed and how do you expect this to happen?
I don't know. What I do know at this stage is that on the 1st of April, the credit records will be cleaned.
Well, thank you for joining us this morning in Namaring, who's a director at Worksman's. Let me get it right. Worksman's Attorneys, in Johannesburg. Thank you once again for joining us.
It's a pleasure. Thank you.
Of course, if you have a bad credit record, it will be expunged from the 1st of April, and that is not an April Fool's joke. Let's take a quick look again at what you are saying on social media and what some of your comments are. Of course, it's been Oscar all the way, and we think we'll be crossing there at 9:30 for the court proceedings this morning. Please remember to send us your views. Of course, Fatima Suleiman says, it's disappointing to hear that most South Africans only figured out that our courts are based on a judge and not a jury now. Well, that would be disappointing if you didn't know that. Priscilla says, I actually just can't handle this Oscar Pistorius trial. I get anxiety seeing the tweets on my timeline. I'm going to Australia. Oh my, that's rather drastic, my dear. We wish you well. Gary Jansen says, the coverage is fantastic and very educational. A must-see. Well, in a country where women are abused and killed every day. I think we can learn a lot from this trial and hopefully change legislation going forward. You are not disabled by the disabilities you have. You are able by the abilities you have. That's a positive spin by K. Duma. Hashtag Oscar Pistorius. Keep it coming. We love your contributions at SABC Newsroom. That's where we want you to send us those tweets and so forth. We're going to take a short break. When we come back, we'll go live to Pretoria for the Oscar trial.
Hello and welcome to Rights and Recourse, the show that explores your legal rights and recourse to those violated. I'm your host, Dumila Matez. Will the ban on alcohol, or the marketing of alcoholic beverages, include things like sorghum beer, homemade beer, and those kind of things?
I think what is must be clear is that we are not banning the industry, not at all. We are controlling the industry.
As I'm sitting here, I'm actually agreeing with the minister violently.
Advertisement says to young people it's cool to drink. Drinking is associated with success. Drinking is associated with celebrities.
We cannot afford to have adverts on television that glorifies alcohol.
That's Rights and Recourse, Sundays 2 p.m. on SABC News.
Welcome back. You're watching Newsroom on SABC News. We're getting ready to go to Pretoria. Unfortunately, the line is not up yet for day 3 of the trial of the century. Oscar Pistorius facing murder charges in the North Gauteng High Court. Witness testimony will continue to go. We're about ready to go there. But before, let's take a look at the stories making news headlines. The third state witness is expected back on the witness stand when the Oscar Pistorius murder trial resumes in Pretoria this morning. Charles Jansen testified yesterday that he and his wife, Michelle Burger, were woken by piercing cries followed by gunshots on the morning Riva Steenkamp was shot dead. Johnson's testimony follows that of Estelle van der Merwe, who testified that she heard what seemed to be fighting on the 14th of February last year. The 3 major platinum producers have rejected a revised wage demand from the AMCU union in the 6th week of a crippling strike. AMCU had proposed introducing their 12,500 rand minimum wage demand over 3 years. And with Graham Smith's imminent departure and the series in the balance, the third and final cricket test between South Africa and Australia is poised for a dramatic finish today. The visitors amassed a mammoth 510-run lead before declaring on 303 for 5 shortly before tea on the 4th day. And the Aussies reduced the Proteas to 71 for the loss of 4 wickets at stumps, still 439 runs behind. Now it seems as if matters are proceeding at the North Gauteng High Court. It's day 3. Oscar Pistorius, of course, facing a charge of premeditated murder of his girlfriend, Riva Steenkamp, on Valentine's Day last year. Let's go to the North Gauteng High Court.